unable to know whether A, the ultimatum had been accepted, and B, whether, if it had been accepted, that acceptance had been transmitted to the Indian authorities. Accordingly, in view of the extreme urgency of the matter and the likelihood of an immediate and severe attack on the city, Colonel Lampel of the Red Cross, Colonel Ghaffur, the Pakistan liaison officer, and myself went to the cantonment about 9 o'clock. We there met with General Farman, who confirmed that the communications network had been destroyed. He asked me, on behalf of the United Nations, if we would transmit a message to New Delhi. That message was that the ultimatum was accepted.
Minutes after the surrender, we find the first proof that Pakistani army collaborators had been indulging in a last orgy of killing. As we all discovered later, as many as 200 East Bengalis, potential leaders of the new nation, had been dragged from their homes and butchered. As news of the Pakistani army's surrender spreads, the Mukti Bahini guerrillas come from their hiding places in the city. Not long before, some of them and their supporters had been guests and waiters in the hotel. Their first target is the radio station just down the road from the hotel. Some of them want to shoot their way in, despite the fact that there's no resistance. But for the moment, a semblance of Mukti Bahini law and order prevails. Unofficially, the birth of the new nation is proclaimed when the Bangladesh flag is raised over the radio station. But then, panic. Pakistani soldiers, it said, are firing into the mob. The shots, in fact, came from the guns of other Mukti guerrillas who were firing salutes into the air. In the midst of all this confusion, the Indians finally arrived. Colonel, welcome to Dhaka. Looking at the scene from this end, it has seemed like a rout of the Pakistan army. Is that a fair assessment? What's it been like?
I wouldn't say that. I think it's very heavy and hard fighting. But I think we went about as planned, I would say. Things worked out as we'd assessed it, more or less.
Were there moments where they did really put up a fight to the death?
Oh, yes. I think practically everywhere. The Pakistani soldiers fought extremely well, I must say. In fact, I would say at times it was so fanatical. Then I've sort of said, look at this man, he's just dying for something when he has no business to be just come charging across. It's just ridiculous at times. I felt very sorry, in fact.
It seemed to us that you've taken your time. We've been expecting you for days, 4 or 5 days.
Yes.
What was holding you up particularly? Was it just the politics of the situation, or was it the fighting?
Well, I mean, we were not in a particular hurry, really. I mean, in the sense, we wanted to finish this as quickly as possible, but you know how it is. I mean, you don't want to lose too many men in the bargain. I mean, I like to save my men and yet win a battle if possible, rather than have them massacred. Because, this morning I lost 3 of my men. And this happened half an hour before the ceasefire or whatever it was.
If the Hindu Indians are surprised by the frenzied warmth of their reception, they don't show it. Only those of us who are detached from the scene have time enough to imagine the Muslim founders of Pakistan turning in their graves. But what about the guerrilla leaders? Can they restrain their supporters from revenge? Seconds later, the Mukti Bahini leaders watch while the mob beats up a suspected Pakistani collaborator. At midday, while final arrangements are being made for the formal surrender ceremony, I went to the Pakistani Army headquarters. The new man in charge is General Jacobs, the Indian Chief of Staff for the Eastern Sector. For a victor, he is surprisingly depressed. Privately, he has always been opposed to the war. Now he tells me, I'm worried about the future. We have won the war, but I don't know if we can win the peace. Over lunch, the defeated General Niazi is equally frank. He confirms what we think we already know, that he kept fighting long after the war was lost because President Yahya tricked him into believing the Americans and the Chinese were going to join the fight to save East Pakistan from collapsing. When I suggested to General Niazi that he made a major tactical blunder in defending the prestige border towns instead of withdrawing to a defensive area around Dhaka, he says, "Yes, I know all that, and so did my commanders. We argued for a different strategy, but we had our orders, and we obeyed them because we are soldiers." At dusk, Indian paratroops arrived for the formal surrender ceremony on Dakar racetrack.
A damn good run, huh? You had right through. It is expected of a paratrooper, and you done it.
Yeah, I know. Well, nice seeing you.
Hello. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
What are you doing here?
Congratulations. Well, I thought I was doing these things for 8 months.
I've only done it for 8 days.
On reflection, would you say that the truth is that you really didn't have a chance from the very beginning of the war, once there was a war started?
I am not willing to give any interview, please.
Sir, you are at liberty
Honestly,
not to say anything.
See, no.
I mean, that's...
I can talk to
Please,
you.
just a second, a little later. At the moment, some ceremony is to go on.
By now, General Niazi cannot hide the humiliation he so deeply feels. It seems to me that he is close to tears. And suddenly, we all feel desperately sorry for the once blustering general. At this moment, I think most of us would have given almost anything to see Yahya Khan in General Niazi's place. The change of ownership of one of the most populated and poorest parts of the world is now being confirmed. What the defeated Pakistani army leaves behind it is a legacy of bitterness and hatred. After all that's happened, it's not unnatural, I suppose, for the people of Bangladesh to bay for blood. Their soil is soaked with it, but the lust for revenge is a bad foundation for nationhood. For India now, the joys of victory, but the problems of bringing up a turbulent new nation are yet to come. In 1947, we, the British, carved up the subcontinent and created 2 separate states. Today, 24 years later, after a war that lasted only 13 days, there are now 3 states.